Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mansplaining Mike Show, where wokeness comes to die. I'm your host, Mansplaining Mike, and today we're going to talk about how Donald Trump is forcing peace in the Middle East. He's doing all of the things that he promised he'd do, guys, and I mean that's important. That we know that the President of the United States is at least going to tell the truth about what he wants to do, and he said he wanted peace. And he's fighting for it, guys. And he's already brought us more peace than we've had in the last 4 years. I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu will follow along with what he agreed to with Donald Trump. I think we might end up in a war, but I don't think it'll be World War III. I think we might end up in a war with our ally. Well, ally according to the government anyway. According to history, they wouldn't really be an ally. I'm talking about Israel. I'll put a link in the description box below to where I went into reasons why. But I mean, we could just name a few, like the 5 dancing Mossad agents of 9/11 who were dancing outside of a van full of explosives celebrating that the towers fell. We can talk about how Benjamin Netanyahu went and testified in front of our Congress and lied about weapons of mass destruction to get us into wars with Iraq. I mean, there's a lot of different instances showing that they're not our friends. There was John J. Pollard, the first spy for an allied country to ever be caught, and they were spying for Israel. And they were stealing our nuclear secrets and giving it to Israel. We can look at Jeffrey Epstein, his links to the Mossad. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, we can look at all of these bad things that they've been behind. But like I said, you guys, you shouldn't hate your neighbors for that. Not all Jewish people even believe in the Talmud, I'm sure. I'm sure there's Jewish people who aren't religious at all and don't believe in any of that stuff, guys. So don't go out and be violent because I'm telling you about the Talmud and I'm telling you about how they're really not our friends. I'm talking about Israel. I'm not talking about your next door neighbor. Anyway, guys, let's get into this and see what we think about Donald Trump bringing peace to the Middle East, or at least fighting hard to do so.
Watching a CBS News special report on a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. This just happening within the past few moments or so. I want to bring in now CBS News contributor Robert Berger. He is live in Jerusalem. Robert, I want to go over some of the terms of this agreement. 33 hostages expected to be released from Hamas in the coming days. How soon could we see these hostages released? We're talking about women, children, and senior citizens expected to be among those who are released this weekend.
Well, this is a 6-week ceasefire, so we're going to see a gradual release of these hostages, perhaps in batches of 3 or 4, with the several days in between. The hope is that the first release of 3 hostages could take place as early as Sunday.
And also, too, with this agreement, Palestinians will be released from Israeli custody. What can you tell us about that?
We think the number is around 1,000 Palestinian prisoners that would be released over this 6.
Those are hostages. They're not saying it right. These are kidnapped children that they throw in there and then they rape them. In fact, you can go back, look it up on the news, whatever you want to do, Google it. I'll put a link in the description box below to stories about it. But there was allegations and proof that these men that worked for these prisons were raping the inmates, the people that were detained. So they were going to be charged with it. But when they were going to be charged for that, a lot of the citizens started saying, no, according to our law book, the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, which I talk about often. I'll leave a link in the description box below to a video where you can check it out for yourself. But it says that they allow the rape of prisoners and women and children. So basically they fought to get those men released from custody and didn't want them to be charged. And that was the citizens of Israel doing that.
Weeks, this 6-week ceasefire. And that includes minors, women, and also some militants who are serving life sentences for deadly terrorist attacks on Israelis. That, of course, doesn't sit well with the Israeli public, but what people are saying is, the government too, is that that's the price you have to pay to get those Israeli hostages home. And let's point out, 33 is only about a third of the Israeli hostages held in Gaza.
This is a big win for the Biden administration.
And that might be because Israel killed the other 66. I mean, just think about it. The IDF has this thing called the Hannibal Directive, and I'll pull it up at the end of the show. I'll go ahead and Google it for you guys. But they have this thing called the Hannibal Directive that allows them to kill their own citizens if they're taken hostage and they think they've been compromised or think they might become compromised. But they'll do that just to keep themselves out of being in a weak position or something like that. So, I mean, you can see through a lot of the testimony, a lot of what's going on, that Israel is killing its own people. They did it on October the 7th, too, guys. It shouldn't be a surprise that they would do it on other days.
Less than a week until a new administration takes over. But Margaret Brennan brought up a really interesting point that this deal was actually brokered by members of the Biden team, but also the Trump team, too. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's been Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff.
Joe Biden has been president the last 4 years. Joe Biden didn't have anything to do with this. This was all Donald Trump. In fact, he flew out there and told Netanyahu, you're going to do this or else.
Was in the region, and from what I've heard, kind of twisting arms both here in Israel and in Qatar, which to get to put pressure, Qatar being a mediator with Hamas, to get them to close a deal before he took office. Mr. Trump has famously said that if there was...
I think he's just trying to disrespect Qatar. I don't think that's a hard word to pronounce, and he knows the right pronunciation of it. But I think he's from Israel, and he just want to try to disrespect people. So that's what that's about. But Qatar is not that hard to be able to pronounce.
Wasn't a deal by his inauguration next Monday that there would be all hell to pay. And I think that put pressure both on the Arab mediators and on the Israeli government, including Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Now, it's important to note that this deal still needs to go through the Israeli government. Can you tell us a little bit about how that process works?
First, it will go to the cabinet, where we're expecting a strong majority to support it. There are a couple of right-wing cabinet ministers who oppose this. They don't like the idea of releasing terrorists, and they think that that's...
Israel is not a right-wing government. Look, they live off of our taxpayer dollars. They're a communist country. They pay for their kids' school off of us to go to college, their education that we don't even pay for our own kids in this country to do. And we also pay for all of their health care. We give them all Medicare, basically. It's all paid for by the United States. So this whole idea that they're right-wing, they're absolutely not right-wing. They're a bunch of communists.
That only encourages more kidnapping. But they're going to be in the minority. This vote will get through the cabinet, and then there will be some legal hurdles to overcome. People who oppose the release of the Palestinians can take that to the Supreme Court here in Jerusalem, but that will most likely, the court will approve that release, and that would clear the way for a hostage release beginning as early as Sunday.
And this deal hopefully will bring an end to this very brutal and bloody war. Tens of thousands of people have been killed over the past year, more than a year-long war. Can you give us some perspective on how big a deal this is today?
Well, on both sides of the border, both in Israel and in Gaza, people are exhausted from this war. For the families of the hostages, it's been a huge trial, but actually for the whole country. I mean, especially the hostage issue. The fact that there are 98 Israeli hostages, 60 of whom are believed to be alive that have been held in these dungeons, is something that has hung over the nation really since October 7th, 2023. And so there's some relief, but having said that, as I mentioned, there's still...
October 7th was a massacre done by Israel. They were killing their own citizens. So I don't know why they keep trying to use that as an excuse to go attack Hamas and do the type of damage they're doing. They're not even attacking Hamas. They're attacking civilians. I think Hamas is just there to provoke wars. Netanyahu pays them to provoke wars. I'll leave a link in the description box to proof of that.
Going to be, if this deal goes through, the 33, if they get freed, you still have 65 who are left in Gaza, and it's not clear if and when they're going to make it home.
So what comes next after all of this, Robert? There's a 42-day implementation, as Margaret Brennan reported, to this ceasefire deal. What happens after that?
Okay, so 16 days into this ceasefire, Not clear exactly when the starting point is, but
Okay.
16 days after that, negotiations begin on the second phase to release those 65 Israeli hostages who are left. Probably another 2,000 at least Palestinian prisoners would be freed during that time.
Look at those numbers, 65 compared to 2,000. That's how many people they kidnapped. But they have the right to go and kill everybody else for taking hostages, even though they're doing it. Doesn't really seem fair, does it? But I mean, you got to remember, they think they're the chosen ones. Like I said before, I'll leave a link to an episode I did in the description box below about the Talmud, so you can see for yourself. These guys are not our friends. They hate Christians, they hate Muslims, and they're really targeting Christians over there in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, and in Syria for that matter.
And probably an end to the war if all the hostages are returned. But frankly, I see that second phase as being quite problematic and not a done deal at all.
All right, Robert Berger coming to us live from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it's not done because Netanyahu doesn't want it to be done, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, that's just what it is. Nothing is going to happen unless Israel wants it to happen, because they're the ones who are constantly keeping the war going, blowing up innocent civilians and women. They've been labeled a terrorist group from the International Court of Justice. And this is just more proof that it was Donald Trump who actually made the peace agreements happen. We don't have to listen to this episode here of Radical Leftists. If you want to see it, it's on my Facebook page, Mike B. Mansplaining. I had posted this yesterday. You guys can go on there and look at this video if you like. But I think they did too much to try to discredit Donald Trump and the good things he did. Like, they were trying to say, yeah, he did it, but he only did it maybe because later on he's going to give them permission to annex the whole West Bank. And I mean, there's no evidence of that. If anything, there's evidence of the contrary, that Donald Trump actually really respects the people in the West Bank. In fact, there was an interview he did where he said Abbas was like a father. If I can pull that up quickly, I'll pull it up in the end and I'll put it in the description box below, just so that you guys can see it. I mean, maybe I'll even find the video and add it into this show before it ends. So, I mean, look out for that. It'll be at the end, probably. That's what I'll do. I'll put it on the show at the end. Here's more proof now. Israel is trying to go back on the peace agreement. So they're already going back on what they said they would do, or they're trying to. And I think this might be a opportunity for us to end up in another war. Like, honestly, Trump said, you're going to get in line or else. And now it seems like they're not trying to fall in line. So, I mean, to me, it seems like we might end up at war with Israel, because Donald Trump is giving them every opportunity to just do the right thing and stop killing women and children. But these animals, they don't want to stop doing that. They just want to keep killing innocents. They're not targeting Hamas. If they were targeting people, they would have did a targeted strike like they did against Hezbollah with them pagers. So we know they have the capabilities of not targeting women and children. They just choose not to when it comes to the Palestinians. Anyway, guys, let's get through this and see what they're talking about on Fox News.
Back to live now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. We transition to other top stories and breaking news alerts on this Thursday morning. Right now, I want you to take a live look out in communist Gaza as we are following breaking news as it relates to conflicts in the Middle East.
Hold on, communist Gaza? They're not living off of the American taxpayer dollars. That's Israel. Communism was founded in Judaism. It doesn't have anything to do with them people in Gaza. That's ridiculous. Them people have no way of living. They don't even have a government, so let alone a communist one. They don't even have a real government.
Thursday, AP reporting that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says, quote, that a last-minute crisis with Hamas was holding up Israeli approval of a long-awaited agreement to pause the fighting in the Gaza Strip and release dozens of hostages, end quote. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes have killed dozens of people across the war-ravaged territory, according to the Associated Press. They go on to say Netanyahu's office said his cabinet won't meet to approve the agreement until Hamas backs down, accusing it of going against parts of the agreement in an attempt to gain further concessions.
Look into who was funding the Hamas. Or maybe after this video, I'll go ahead and pull it up for you guys. But Netanyahu was funding Hamas. He wants to break up these peace agreements. That's his goal, because they want to push for a greater Israel where they overtake Syria and Lebanon. They're just trying to be at war forever, and they want us to be dragged into war forever. And guys, we can't keep sending our children out there to die, or sending our money out there while we have an open border crisis and fentanyl coming over our borders. Hundreds of thousands of people got killed here because of the fentanyl crisis in our open borders. But it seems like we're getting ready to send our troops over there to help out Israel after Netanyahu started a war. Like, I mean, think about it. They only had 1,000 people that they claim died on October 7th. Probably 700 of them people was killed by the IDF. I'll put proof in the description box below to that. And yet we're going to war over it. Over 1,000 people. 100,000 people died because of our open border, and we're not going to war to protect our own nation. Kind of lets you know who's in charge right now, at least when the Democrats are in charge. And that's Israel.
Sessions. A lot to dissect this morning, so we want to bring into the conversation Fox 5 New York's Haley Fixler. Haley, good morning to you. What can you share with us at this hour?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, Israeli leaders are saying that Hamas is now making some new last-minute demands and are backtracking on previous arrangements and agreements. And as you mentioned, the Israeli cabinet, they were set to vote and approve the ceasefire hostage deal today, but that meeting has now been canceled. A lot of people were very excited yesterday when they thought this was a done deal, but now it looks like a waiting game.
A ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas.
In his farewell address, President Joe Biden shared with the country the details of the new ceasefire and hostage release deal he says his administration helped broker between Israel and Hamas. President-elect Donald Trump also sent his own envoy to work with Biden's group. He threatened there would be, quote, hell to pay if the hostages were not released by the time he took office.
Sounds like it's time for dark MAGA. It's time for us to turn on Israel. They're the ones who keep causing all these wars. Donald Trump said it himself. I'll pull that video up in this show so that you guys can see it. It'll probably be towards the end, guys.
It's been 468 days since Hamas launched their attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, taking 251 people hostage, including women and children, and killing more than 1,200 people. For the last year and a half, the war has killed thousands on both sides.
There's been so much death. So this has to happen.
While details are still being worked out, family members of those who were killed on October 7th have some hope for the other families impacted. Andrea Weinstein's sister and brother-in-law, both American citizens, were murdered in the terror attack. Hamas is holding their bodies captive in Gaza.
Let's pause that. We don't know what terror attack they're talking about because the IDF terrorists started killing their own citizens during that attack. So it could have been the IDF that killed them. Maybe it was somebody from Hamas. We'll never know the truth because they'll never tell it to us. Maybe Donald Trump will bring some type of transparency, especially if we end up having to go to war with Israel because they refuse to respect what Donald Trump said. And he's the president of the United States. Whether or not liberal people like it or not, these countries need to respect our commander-in-chief. They need to respect his authority. I think that's what Cartman would say.
You will respect my authority.
Yeah. Anyway, let's keep going.
Fat Zahler's cousin and her family were kidnapped by Hamas. Kafir is the youngest of the hostages. He was taken when he was 8 months old. He will turn 2 years old in captivity on Saturday.
These days are horrible for us. It's time to end this. There won't be any more opportunities like this. It's time to bring home our people.
Officials confirmed the tentative deal will be broken into 3 phases over 42 days, originally set to begin Sunday. In phase 1, Hamas says they will release 33 hostages, including 2 Americans, 65-year-old Keith Siegel and 35-year-old Sagi Dekelchen. In return, Israeli officials are set to release 1,000 jailed Palestinian prisoners. The temporary ceasefire will also allow additional humanitarian aid to go into Gaza and the removal of Israeli forces from some areas of Gaza. Many on both sides are hoping this will signal better times ahead for everyone.
Listen to what they're saying. They're going to remove their soldiers from some areas of Gaza. meaning they're still going to be attacking a whole lot of people.
I hope this war will end and have peace between the Israeli and the Palestinian.
We are very hopeful that will really take a place because this has been a long struggle for the past 15 months for all these innocent kids and elder people.
Now, if a ceasefire agreement is reached, a third American hostage, Edan Alexander, he's from New Jersey. He is set to be released in that second phase of the deal. The UN also says they'll add additional humanitarian aid to Gaza. Live at the UN, Haley Fixler, back to you.
Haley Fixler with Fox 5 New York. Stellar and detailed reporting. Haley, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, that sounds great, guys. Let's hope that those peace agreements fall through and we don't end up in a war with anybody. But if we do end up in a war because the peace agreements don't go through, I think it's really important that we blame the people that ought to be blamed. And Donald Trump has said in the past that Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel doesn't want peace. So I'm going to pull that up right here. Well, anyways, guys, let's let Donald Trump go ahead and tell us how Netanyahu doesn't want peace. And let's see what he has to say.
Have a lasting peace. First thing you have to ask, do they both want to make it? I have a real question as to whether or not both sides wants to make it. I have a real question as to one side in particular, whether or not they want to make it. Well, I don't want to say that right now. I think one side actually would like a deal, and I think the other one maybe doesn't want a deal, to be honest. I don't want to say it. No, look, we show our cards too much in the I wrote The Art of the Deal. We show our cards too much. So if I get into that, I don't want to say this and that, and then they'll come and they'll say, well, Trump is biased one way or the other. I think there's a chance that you could probably make a deal if you had a real deal maker, if you had somebody that knew what he or she was doing. In my opinion, if Israel wants to make a deal, I think a deal could be made. I think a lot is going to do with Israel. And look, it's going to have to do with both sides, but a lot will have to do with Israel and whether or not Israel wants to make the deal.
I thought he wanted to make a deal more than Netanyahu. And I will be honest, I had a great meeting with him, Abbas, right? I had a great meeting with him, and we spent a lot of time together, talked about many things, and it was almost like a father. I mean, he was so nice. Couldn't have been nicer. And after meeting with Bibi for 3 minutes, I looked at him and said, you don't want to make a deal, do you? And he said, well, and the fact is, I don't think Bibi ever wanted to make a deal. Why? I thought the Palestinians were impossible, that the Israelis would do anything to make peace and a deal. I found that not to be true.
Well, there you have it. Donald Trump is letting you know that Netanyahu and Israel are the problems. The Palestinians want peace, but for some reason it's never able to be achieved. And that reason is none other than Netanyahu, guys. So it seems like maybe Trump will turn on Israel. At least that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what it seems like. All evidence points to that being so. Look, we don't need to be in all of these wars, and the Founding Fathers said it themselves that we shouldn't be involved in all of these foreign entanglements, guys. And, I mean, here's an example of it. This is Washington's own words. These aren't my words, guys, that we're not supposed to be in foreign entanglements. This is what the Founding Fathers said. This was never meant to be this country.
Far as we have already formed engagements, let them be fulfilled with perfect good faith. Here let us stop. It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world, so far, I mean, as we are now at liberty to do it, for let me not be understood as capable of patronizing infidelity to existing engagements. I hold the maxim no less applicable to public than to private affairs, that honesty is always the best policy. I repeat it, therefore, let those engagements be observed in their genuine sense. But, in my opinion, it is unnecessary and would be unwise to extend them. Why? By interweaving our destiny with that of any part of Europe, entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of European ambition, rivalship, interest, humor, or caprice.
Yeah, it was basically saying we ought not be involved in these everlasting foreign entanglements where we're constantly being drug into wars from our neighbors and our allies, supposedly. I mean, it's not really being an ally or a friend to us if you're always getting us into war, and we're the ones who are expected to take care of you guys. So you're getting us into war and we're expected to do all the heavy lifting. I don't think that's very fair, guys. I don't think anybody should have to listen to people like that. Like, they're going to tell us that we have to go to war in order to protect them. We fought a war against Britain, against Great Britain, in order for us to become an independent nation. They didn't even want us to be, at the end of the day, guys. So, I mean, we can't keep on allowing this government to try to trick us into giving up our freedoms. And I mean, that's what evil does at the end of the day. That's why a lot of people say that this Republican versus Democrat thing, or Donald Trump, not really a Republican, because he's not really involved in the uniparty. He kind of has his own policies that he wants to push. So when I talk about it, I'm not talking about MAGA candidates or anybody like that. I'm not talking about Thomas Massey or Rand Paul. I mean, we have a few good politicians, and we don't let them get far enough, to be honest with you guys. So I just want to let it be known, I'm not talking about the good guys. Well, anyway, guys, as you can see, the people on Twitter are going crazy. Everybody is happy that Donald Trump is fighting back against Israel. Finally, it seems like we're gaining our independence back, guys. And this is just great. You can just scroll these walls all day and see it. Now, you already got to see that Trump forced the peace agreement onto Netanyahu. You got to see where Trump basically was saying that it's Israel's fault that we're always at war and we don't even need to be in the Middle East. It's not benefiting us at all. We have energy under our feet. We don't need to steal energy from the Middle East. I mean, at the end of the day, every nation needs to be a lot more independent. And that's not the only good things Donald Trump is doing for this country either. I mean, let's just look at the facts. Like, Donald Trump has also gotten JFK into our government as the health secretary. And I must say, I think he's doing a great job in comparison to the last guys, for sure. I mean, and just a great job in general. We're not going to be so dependent on pharmacy. Big pharmacies trying to get control over them and stop poisoning our foods and stop poisoning our drinks and stop poisoning our water and just stop poisoning us through red dyes and yellow dyes and these vaccines that don't seem to be doing much. I mean, honestly, it seems like a breath of fresh air in consideration that the last health secretary was a deranged cross-dressing male who thought he was a real woman and was demanding that everybody call him as such. Really strange, guys. Anyway, let's get into it and see what Benny Johnson has to say about it, and we'll also see a speech that RFK gave on these poisons that are going into our body. And guys, there's like 200 poisons that go into our food that other countries have banned from their foods, guys. We're supposed to be the country that protects our citizens. Instead, we're letting other countries take our place as leaders of the best lifestyle that we offer to our citizens. I mean, they're at least taking the poisons out of their food supply. Instead, it seems like we're crash test dummies. Let's see what these poisons do to the citizens. Anyway, guys, let's get into what Benny Johnson had to say.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. What is the most powerful words spoken during the 2024 election? Well, it has to be President Trump, right? Maybe J.D. Vance, maybe. But may I humbly... submit to you that perhaps, depending on where you're coming from, the most important thing said during the 2024 election was this.
And my prayer is this. I ask God for 19 years to put me in a position where I could end the chronic disease epidemic and bring health back to our children.
RFK would go on to say, and then God sent me Donald Trump. And the crowd goes wild. I watched the crowd go wild. I watched RFK give a speech like that in a stadium like that in the front row, and I heard the rafters come crashing down. Ladies and gentlemen, such a powerful...
You know where you've never heard anything like that? a Democratic National Convention. Except in like 1924 when the KKK were all celebrating that the Democrats were like trying to enforce the public schooling system that they were pushing for. Anyway, guys, let's keep going.
Powerful line, such a powerful drive. What a wonderful goal. What an important mission to accomplish. Can anybody argue with it? Of course not. No one would ever argue with somebody who's clearly this healthy being in charge of health in our country. And RFK Jr. is on his way to becoming the HHS secretary in this nation. Now, he's going to have to get hazed and trolled on his way there. Obviously, he's going to be forced to eat a considerable amount of seed oils in these McDonald's hamburgers and chicken nuggets and fries that have been procured for him. But nonetheless, he's going to make it. I mean, he's going to make it. And if you need any further evidence that this is a good thing, go ahead and check out the nosedive of all of the big pharma companies upon the announcement of RFK as HHS.
Isn't that amazing? Now that we have somebody who's really concerned about our health as health secretary, everybody is stopping throwing their money into the pot of these health institutes that are really just poisoning us. Big Pharma is failing, guys. And it's only because Donald Trump and RFK Jr. are making it fail. They're letting them know you can't keep poisoning people. You're not going to get away with it anymore. And guys, you can see the results.
HHS secretary. Well, ladies and gentlemen, get a load of this. Already having the most powerful consequences is this nomination that the FDA, in order to get ahead of it, and maybe not give RFK the satisfaction of banning some of the most poisonous food dyes in our country, has decided to start banning food dyes that cause cancer. FDA bans red food dye due to its potential cancer risk. Food manufacturers have until January 2027 to remove the dye from their products. U.S. Food and Drug Administration has officially banned red dye, called Red Dye 3 or astracycline, from foods, dietary supplements, ingested medicines, reported the Associated Press on Wednesday. Food manufacturers must remove the dye from the products by 2027, while drug manufacturers...
Isn't that a little crazy they got till 2027 to remove it from our foods, even though we know it's causing us cancer? So they got 3 years to keep poisoning us. Absolutely crazy. They don't need that long to be poisoning us. We need to say, look, enough is enough. This is going to happen on day one. Today. Right now.
Manufacturers will have until 2028. Why is this in drugs? Any foods imported from the U.S. and other countries will be subject to the new regulation. Why does it have to take so long? Why can't you just do this immediately? Seriously? Evidence shows cancer in laboratory male rats exposed to high levels of red number 3. Importantly, the way that the red number 3 causes cancer in male rats does not occur in humans. Oh yeah, you believe them? The synthetic dye, which is made from petroleum, uses a color additive to food ingested in drugs and give them a bright cherry red color.
And yellow dye number 4 is just as bad, if not worse.
Hell cares what color your food is. Shouldn't food just be the color of food? The petition to ban red dye cited the Delaney cause, which states that the agency cannot classify color additives as safe if it has been found to induce cancer in humans or animals. This is a welcome but long overdue action from the FDA, removing the unsustainable double standard in which Red 3 was banned from lipstick but permitted in candy, says the director of the Science Research Center. Okay. Well.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, honestly, who needs the bright colors in the candy? If you like eating candy, you're going to like it whether it's clear, whether it's red, whether it's yellow. In fact, you should probably like it less if it has the colors, it seems, because those colors are just there to kill you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, they're trying to beat RFK to the punch here, but RFK punches back, and will punch back a lot harder. He's been doing that for a long time. FDA's banned Dye 3, citing cancer concerns. The dye is still used in thousands of food, candy, cereals, cherries, and fruit cocktails, strawberry-flavored milkshakes. Maha. Kind of wild they waited 35 years to ban something that we eat that was already deemed to be unsafe. How much red food dye have you ingested in your lifetime? I mean, gallons of it? Food and Drug Administration said Wednesday is banning red number 3, a synthetic dye that gives food drinks bright red cherry color, has been linked to cancer in animals. The dye is still used in thousands of products. ladies and gentlemen. If something isn't safe for your skin, then it's not safe to eat. The FDA is finally banning Red 3 from our foods. It only took them 35 years since they banned it from makeup. Now it's time to ban Red 40, Yellow 5, and 6.
Isn't that crazy? Makeup is safer than food. How did that happen? That's what happens when you trust the government.
High fructose corn syrup and all the trash in our food. That's exactly right. It's my hope that Robert Kennedy and the MAGA crew can get Red 40 and other harmful dyes out of Americans' foods that kids eat every single day. Riley Gaines, ladies and gentlemen, saying the FDA wouldn't have done this if Harris had won. Anything to prevent the Trump administration from getting credit. Nonetheless, this is a win. It took Trump winning to make this happen. That's right. You've been lied to for a long time, says Stephen Miller, quoting us in this important announcement. I thought RFK was wrong. That's right. Amazing. We're going to see some pretty remarkable things happen in our country. People are already looking deep into the rabbit hole about some of the more horrible poisons like tetrazine that are in all of our food.
And he hasn't even gotten to the vaccines yet. Wait till he starts saying, hey, enough is enough. We got to get rid of those poisons that we're injecting into our kids.
That are still legal somehow. Bracing for the impact of RFK. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is exactly why the Senate needs to confirm RFK as HHS Secretary. I look forward to his leadership to combat corruption and increase transparency. Obviously, Donald Trump agrees with this. This is why he put RFK on his MAGA Avengers, MAGA Justice League, right? Here. Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready. It's happening. RFK Jr. reaches through time to ban things before taking office. A total and complete Time Lord. This is great news, says Gina Carano, but it shouldn't take social pressure and threat of RFK to get their jobs done. FDA approved used to mean something. What do you feel when somebody says it's FDA approved now? Yeah, well, what that means is that enough lobbyists have been able to buy their products into poisoning us. And
they're able to buy approval is what I think he meant to say.
Put on American shelves. Here is the single most important and motivating video I've ever seen a politician produce. It is RFK explaining what is in our food. And it's very simple, and it's spoken in plain English, and it's spoken from the heart, and it is a breakdown that is shocking but unbelievably important, and why I will fight tooth and nail as a father of 4 children to make sure that RFK gets the chair. Here we go.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way. Until the early 1990s, our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now, in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm, and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? A big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tetrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. A century ago, it was just an obnoxious industrial byproduct that everybody was trying to figure out ways to get rid of. One of the ways that they did that was by paving roads. But then a British chemist figured out that the coal tar could be used to derive fabric dye. And if fabric dye, why not food? Food manufacturers began using it to cover up the discoloration of low-quality foods that they wanted to pass off on unsuspecting customers.
Isn't that crazy? They got us eating fabric dye. That doesn't even sound like a good idea. Here, guys, we got some dye for you to eat. It's what dyes your clothes. Try it out. See how you like it.
They didn't know back then that this yellow dye, tartrazine, causes tumors, asthma, developmental delays, neurological damage, ADD, ADHD, hormone disruption, gene damage, anxiety, depression, intestinal injuries. Well, we know it now. We've known this for decades. That's why tartrazine is heavily restricted in other countries. In some countries, foods with tartrazine have a warning label that it may cause ADHD in children. Today, it's made from petroleum, not coal tar. Either way, it's crazy to add this to your kids' favorite foods. It doesn't even change the flavor. This yellow dye isn't just in junk food. It's in the foods that we consider healthy. It's in everyday kids' snacks like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks. It's in sports drinks like Gatorade and so-called vitamin water. It's even added to chicken broth, to corn, to pickles, to mustard, and to yogurt. And so, of course, our kids get sick. And we lovingly feed them chewable vitamins which have, surprise, tartrazine. And so the cycle continues until the coughs and asthma kick in, at which point you go to pick up some cough syrup. And yeah, you guessed it, tartrazine. I've been picking on tartrazine today, but that's just one of at least 100 chemical poisons that our health agencies allow into our children's food. I can make a video just like this to talk about Red 40, BHA, BHD, potassium bromate, chemical after chemical, and on and on and on. If just one of them can cause all of these problems, imagine what they're doing in combination. That's never been studied. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives. It's not all dark. Over the past 16 years, the government has banned 8 chemical additives that cause cancer, genetic damage, asthma, and many of the other self-conditions as tartrazine does. And you know what's interesting? All 8 of those crucial steps forward in our kids' health were taken under President Trump. But the Democrats who claim to be all about health care have stood by watching other countries ban these poisons and make our kids sick, asthmatic, hyperactive, and depressed. They left them on every supermarket shelf in America. They even used your tax money to put them in your kids' school lunch. So their big food and their big ag donors probably gave them all that golden handshake and the big money hug. And their big pharma donors probably called them up and thanked them also, because now they're going to make billions selling Adderall, Prozac, and rescue inhalers. Enough is enough. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
Yeah, that's a big problem with the FDA and the EPA. I mean, they're really here to protect big pharma, is what it seems like. And these big corporate industries, they're not really worried about our health or what we need to be eating or what's going to make us live better lives. They're more worried about just poisoning us and pushing their population control agenda, is what it seems to me, guys. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. This is the Mansplaining Mike Show, where wokeness comes to die. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to share this with one of your liberal buddies or liberal friends, or just some liberal that you even dislike. I mean, it's always fun to swim around in their liberal tears, and this show, hopefully it makes them cry. If not, I guess I'm not doing a good job. I'll catch you guys on the next one, though. I'm out.